are entrepreneurs born or made? Some say they're born. I don't fully believe it. But I can tell you, you can train anyone to be an entrepreneur. That has been my research for the past 12 years. As a student at MIT and as a faculty at Asia School of Business. And from these years, I can tell you the skills in creativity and entrepreneurship in children anywhere in the world is the same, no matter what your race, gender, or economic status is. We are all born with certain dormant entrepreneur in us. Most of us go through our lives without ever awakening it. Some of us gather enough courage to aspire to be an entrepreneur. Some of us go out and do the first part, and still a smaller few numbers actually go out and do multiple startups. And mostly the first startups always fail. Current entrepreneurship programs, development programs anywhere in the world, primarily take the aspiring ones and train them to do their first startup. Unfortunately, that's only about 3% of the population. And all our effort in entrepreneurship development is converting this 3% into 1%. While we are missing out on the larger majority of such potential population that we do not touch, the 97%. And that is where I was focusing to see, can we convert these children and youth all over the world to become future entrepreneurs? What if we train them in the basic skills of entrepreneurship, what I call the pre-entrepreneur, where you're trained in the mindset, skill sets, the confidence and the aspiration to take on challenges. Interestingly, these are the same skills that you need to be a good employee, to be a producer, a contributor. In the meantime, we are facing a much larger problem in the school systems in the US. We are seeing what we call the chronic absenteeism. It has doubled after COVID. What used to be, now it's about 17 million kids who are missing school. And this started during the pandemic, where children did not get enough learning. They stayed at home. Many of them did not have devices, connectivity, and teachers were just about learning how to teach. And most of the students didn't even have the right environment at home to learn. And they did not learn enough. They got pushed up. Now they're learning higher concepts without learning the basics. They started disengaging, lost their confidence, and stopped coming to school. Now, absenteeism leads to dropout. Dropout leads to poor earning potential, which leads to poverty, and I believe it even leads to social unrest. So we have a generation in danger of dropping out. US Department of Education called this educational crisis, and I believe this is a brewing crisis in national security. To connect the two threads together, if everyone has the same potential, can we change the life of these kids who are in the danger of dropping out? Can we bring them into our workforce? Can we turn them into innovators and entrepreneurs? And the answer is yes, if we engage very early on. See, children are born as fearless and exploratory learners. That is their superpower. You leave a child in the room and she's going to go test out things and even taste out things. And she has no fear of doing something wrong. And actually, she doesn't know what wrong is. Okay, and that is an adult concept. Why do we lose this curiosity over time? I believe it is primarily because of our curriculum-centric, strict curriculum-centric education system, which primarily is a teaching system, not a learning system. When the teacher writes on the board and you have copied into your notebook, the teaching part is over. The learning hasn't started. So we cover a lot of content. This has been there for the last 200 years. So we cover a lot of content, teach a lot of information without the application. We cover a lot of content without context. This start to disengage. Students start to move on, and this is what is causing this issue. The challenge, the program that we created and the framework of developing these pre-entrepreneurs with these skills and confidence starts with the zeros, the 97% that we otherwise are missing out. And the first job is to turn them into makers, the creative ones, where can you teach them how to be creative, build their curiosity, build their confidence, and self-learning skills. So we created this program where in 2 days, we asked them to design all kinds of things, make and play. So these are for school kids. We started with that, where in 2 days they learn physical design, mechanical design, CAD, putting stuff together, electrical system, Arduino's, electronics, and coding. So we're doing physical systems, electrical system, logic system, and converting it all into something that is usable. This child was making a baby cradle, where when you put the baby in there, it starts to rock it. Doesn't solve any world problems, but you start to put these systems together. This interdisciplinary learning is slowly built into them and actually builds a confidence in their own ability to learn. The next stage is that of an innovator. Innovator needs to find and solve problems, and that builds their critical thinking and the problem-solving skills. And once you have found a problem and use your previous skills to create products and services, you have started becoming a problem solver. The third stage is that of an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is the value creator. Now that you know you have solved a problem, you have created something, how do you commercialize and how do you monetize this value that you have created? We ran several programs all over the world, and one interesting set of workshops that stood out where we went to rural government schools in Malaysia and in India, and the question we were asking is, can we train them? Can we build their curiosity and their learning skills? And second question is, can we build ecosystems, nurturing innovation ecosystems in their schools? So we started with creating a maker lab in a box. So you see 3D printers and electronics and motors and wheels and hand tools, power tools, meters, all kinds of things, all fit into a box. And we created several such boxes. And we went to schools and ran programs for school kids and taught them these things. And this is what was happening in Malaysia. This is on the border with Thailand. And most of the kids did not speak English. So we started the class with, please assemble your 3D printer, which came as a kit, because we wanted them to take care of it. Most of them did not know how to use a screwdriver. We started with the righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, then learn CAD, design something like a name tag, phone stand, headphone loop or something like that, and print before lunch on day one. And kids had no pushback. They never actually said, oh, this is way too much for me, I cannot learn. Children had no pushback. Adults had trouble believing it. The experiment in India was more interesting because these students had never touched a computer. The schools did not have computers. So we started the session with, this is a mouse, this is where you click Google, and by end of the first day, the first application that they learned ever on a computer was 3D CAD. Second was to put together electronics, controllers, write code, and they started creating things like this. And I came back to East Coast. I ran the same experiment in the top private school there, one of those Harvard feeder schools. And I found that the kids in the villages and kids in these schools were exactly the same in their abilities. We were measuring their confidence building and such. We found a huge boost in their confidence and the learning skills. So I have run these programs for children, youth, adults, and even professionals. And what I found something really strange is that the adults had this visceral pushback or resistance to learning. They felt they would be wrong. What happens if it's wrong? What happens if I fail? And this was really, really stopping them from learning. Adults in school kids, youth had some problem, but we could nudge them in universities. But school kids, they took to it like fish to water. I could just show them something, they'll just jump in and do this. And we all have certain comfort zone that we sit in. And there is fear zone. This fear zone grows as we grow older. And then comes the learning zone and the growth zone. And what I found is that somewhere in the mid-teens, children start to build their fear zone, start to believe that I cannot do this, I don't have the confidence. And then after that, it keeps growing. And what I found was that in girls, very early on, where she has heard 1,000 times from all kinds of people that boys can do something better than girls, and it's not true at all. But the poor girl keeps hearing the same thing and starts to believe this and makes her decisions on what to study and what career to take, etc., based on this limiting belief that I may not be able to do this. The only way to deal with this is to reach her very early on and build that confidence. So we wanted to build these ecosystems in these schools. And ecosystems primarily consist of 3 parts. One is a center with a space where children can come and learn, meet. It has tools and facilities and such. A community of learners and mentors and students who can work with each other and support each other. And the culture. A culture primarily is supporting each other. When it fails, it's perfectly fine. You can help each other. At MIT, every 10 years, the whole student body is being replaced by new students. But the ecosystem stays. That's because the culture is strong. It infects anyone who walks in, and she starts to infect the next generation. And this culture is the one that is sustaining this whole ecosystem. I have conducted about 100 or so workshops around the world and created these ecosystems in several of these places, all over, primarily in Asia. And currently, I'm working on building regional ecosystems. Regional ecosystem primarily focuses on community and colleges, and how do we train these youth and use them as the mentors to go out and train in schools. So we are making the youth as more skillful and employable, and we are making them to make a change in school kids and inspire them to be and recognize their potential. Absenteeism is a crisis today. It is going to blow up in our face very soon if we do not deal with the children who are missing out on schools. And we are going to lose a generation of schools, and this is also happening in colleges. We need to bring experiential and application-based learning into schools, right, very early on, and create the future change makers, innovators, and entrepreneurs. And we need to reach them very early on, and before they lose their superpower. And I believe we need to reach them in their middle school. Especially, we need to focus on girls very early on. I believe if you can change the beginning of the story of a child, we can change her entire story. Thank you.